Hello, my name is Josh and welcome back to FPL Graduates. In today's video, we're going through my first ever FPL draft, taking a look at who I think are the best players to own straight away. Obviously, we are a few weeks off the start of the season, and I'm sure that this draft will change by the time the deadline does roll around, but it's just dropped. FPL's here. Let's get straight into it. Okay then, so here we are on this new look FPL. Obviously it's the same style as FPL Challenge on the interface. Personally not quite used to it yet, but we'll start off with the new chip as well. There's so many changes that we haven't really discussed here on YouTube just yet. If you haven't seen already, obviously there's that mystery chip that's coming in January 2025. We don't know too much yet about it, which is a bit annoying because it's hard to plan for going forwards. There's some other little changes as well to the bonus points, which could make a big difference, which we will do a full video on closer to the start of the season, and how that sort of affects individual players, which could be a massive thing. You know, players getting more bonus points now for shots on targets, fouls, goal line clearances, and also losing bonus points for defenders and goalkeepers for conceding goals. So it definitely changes the dynamic a little bit in terms of bonus points. I wouldn't say it necessarily changes the whole dynamic of the game. They're not getting points for different points for scoring and stuff like that, so that's just something to bear in mind. Okay then, so getting into my first ever FPL draft for the 24-25 season. I'm so excited for this game to finally drop. It's been a while, but we're back now into the proper fantasy stuff. Starting off in goal, we've got Bart Verbruggen from Brighton. If you haven't seen already, the new Brighton manager is like a Jose Mourinho regen. He's basically a really defensive coach. You know, some of the highest XGC numbers in Europe last season for his team. So I expect that to sort of be transitioned into this Brighton team and then be a lot more pragmatic in their approach. Therefore, me thinking that Brighton will keep a few more clean sheets than maybe they have done in the past. So he's in goal for me at the moment. There are a plethora of 4.5 million options, and at the moment there are 4 million starting goalkeepers at the time I'm recording. So it's a little bit tricky to pick maybe a 4.5 and a 4. That is my personal favourite strategy for a keeper. I don't really like picking two goalkeepers who will both play and you've got to decide which one to play when. I just think you're always going to pick the wrong one eventually. So yeah, for me, I would do the 4.5 and a 4. There are a few teams that allow you to pick the 4.5 and the 4 from the same team. So if, say, the 4.5 gets injured, you can get the 4. So Areola and Fabianski from West Ham. I think there's Flecken, and I'm not sure on the 4.0 million option. Maybe Strakosha if he's still there. So there's those two. I think you can maybe do it for Wolves as well with Jose Sarr and I think Bentley. So there are a few options like that, but for me, I will stick with Verbruggen for now for the points that I just discussed about with the manager. In the defence, we've got Dan Burn and Ezri Konsa. The reason I want to talk about these both at the same time is because Newcastle and Aston Villa's fixtures rotate really, really well. So that's something to be a note of. I think Crystal Palace sort of get in there as well in the rotation. So if you really wanted to, you could have all three of those sort of defences. But for me, I think Newcastle, obviously Southampton at home on the first day is a nice fixture. West Ham away is not an easy fixture for Aston Villa, but I do believe Aston Villa look like they're making some really good acquisitions in their team. Obviously lost a few important players too, like Douglas Luiz and potentially Moussa Diaby as well. So it's been an interesting sort of dynamic to see how that Aston Villa team sort of plans out with obviously Champions League football this season. And obviously, yeah, Dan Burn, again, might not necessarily be starting for Newcastle come the first day of the season, but there are a few £4.5 million options in that Newcastle defence that I believe one of them will start between Lewis Hall, Lloyd Kelly, their new signing from Bournemouth, or Dan Burn. Obviously, Sven Botman is going to be out for a while, so yeah, we won't see him much at the start of the season. And obviously, Fabian Schär and Trippier are substantially more than Dan Burn. So yeah, so whoever is that sort of starting 4.5 Newcastle defender, I'm almost certain that I will have them by the start of the season. And as you can see, the third defender on the team is Luke Shaw. £5 million, back down to £5 million. Obviously, finished the Euros, played 90 minutes in the final. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of match fitness he's at come the first match day. But I'm still talking Euros fantasy first game week. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what his fitness is like. But for me, when he is fit, him and Marcus Rashford on that left-hand side, they're a fantastic combination. And for £5 million for Luke Shaw, good attacking threat. They've got Fulham at home on the opening day, which is not an easy fixture. I think Fulham beat them at Old Trafford last season, but I think Luke Shaw does provide good value, and there are a host of £5 million options in that sort of price bracket that could provide good value, like Reece James, for example, Mark Cucurella from the Chelsea defence. So, yeah, he's there for now. Will he be there game week 1? I'm not so sure. Okay, then, so moving on into the midfield, we've got Bukayo Saka up first. He is the most premium, I guess you could say, midfielder out of the lot. Wolves at home on the opening day, but in general, Arsenal's fixtures are not the easiest to start the season, so it's definitely not a fixture players team to go and target. But for me, Bukayo Saka looks great. He had a really, really good Euros, I thought, and yeah, he is slightly more expensive than those other Arsenal attackers now, though. There is a big sort of difference in sort of price. We've got Odegaard at 8.5 that you could look at. Martinelli is cheap as 7 million, same as Leandro Trossard at 7 as well. So, yeah, probably quite a premium asset to go for considering the team that he plays for. He is going to have to substantially differentiate himself in terms of points between the likes of those guys that I've just mentioned to really be worth it. So it'd be interesting to see if he does that. I think the main thing that's going to sort of contribute to that is whether he is still going to take penalties. We saw last season it sort of flip-flopped around the team with Odegaard taking some, Saka taking some. So yeah, if he can sort of nail down penalties, I think it'll be worth it, but definitely not a lock in my team at the moment. Next up, we have Anthony Gordon. Again, Newcastle's opening couple of fixtures are decent. Southampton at home is the prime fixture at home to a newly promoted side who defensively last season were not great under Russell Martin. Anthony Gordon at home last season as well was fantastic. Got most of his returns at home last season. So a good option for me there, and only 7.5 million, which when you consider a lot of other options, that is cheap in this game this year. James Maddison as well, another £7.5 million option here. Spurs, again, a nice fixture. Leicester away on the opening day. His former club, the first time I do believe he'll be facing them, his former club, since joining Spurs as well. So an interesting dynamic there as well. He's already got an assist at the time of recording against Hearts in pre-season, which is always a bonus as well. But I think, yeah, Maddison, a full summer of rest. He looks really leggy after coming back from his injury last season. And obviously, if we remember, he started last season so well. So hopefully he can improve on that form and be an absolute superstar going into this season. Now, the third and final £7.5 million midfielder is going to be Diogo Jota. And just seeing him, he sort of just crept up through the list for me at the moment. As you can see, obviously, don't have Mohamed Salah in this draft with my 5 midfielders. And that is because, obviously, the budget has been spent elsewhere, which we'll get onto in a moment. So I'm going to have to gamble on one of these Liverpool other attacking assets that is not Mo Salah going into the season. And obviously, we're not really seeing too much of Arne Slot's team at the time of recording. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But for me, Diogo Jota getting moved down to a midfielder, being priced at 7.5 million, he's always been the best second Liverpool attacker after Mohamed Salah in terms of returns when he does play. The problem is that he's never usually fit enough to play a lot of games in succession. So yeah, for me, he looks really, really interesting. I do think Cody Gakpo does as well at 7.5 million, but he is a forward, so bear that in mind. Obviously, Diaz is 7.5 as a mid, and then Darwin is also 7.5 as a mid. So it definitely does come down to who we think might start come game week 1. So Diogo Jota is definitely not nailed in this team come my game week 1 deadline. But if he is anywhere near to being nailed, I think he's absolutely stupid value at 7.5 million. Plus, you've got the fixture of Ipswich away, which, to be honest, I think getting close to the deadline, I probably will have maybe more Liverpool players in this team due to just that fixture on the opening day. Our fifth and final midfielder then is another Manchester United player, and that is probably quite controversial having 2 in my opening draft because they haven't necessarily shown the best of themselves so far under Eric Ten Hag, and that is Bruno Fernandes. He did create the most chances in the league last season out of every single player, which is absolutely massive and probably warrants that £8.5 million price tag. A lot of people are probably thinking I can get a lot for 8.5 million or even just a bit more. You know, Phil Foden is only, £9 million, which when you think of that is absolutely outrageous. But for me, that opening fixture Friday night, I want to have a player from that game on the Friday night deadline. I know it sounds stupid, but I just really do. So, and being a United fan myself, I'm just going to sneak Bruno Fernandes in there a little bit. Yeah, I just think he's a quality player on penalties as well. Obviously, United are making some good moves in the transfer market so far. Obviously, we've seen Xerxes and Yoro at the time of recording join that team. So, yeah, for me, it's looking promising for United off the pitch. Let's see if they can do it on the pitch. So to round up the attack then, we've got Alexander Isak up first. He's facing Southampton, as I mentioned, like with Newcastle at home on the opening day. And as it stands, if I was to play this team right now, I would definitely be captaining him against Southampton over all the other assets in this team, just because that fixture is so good. And obviously Isak is on penalties if Callum Wilson is not there, which I don't expect Wilson to necessarily start in game week 1 as it stands. So yeah, really nice option. 8.5 million is a good price as well. I can't complain with Isak. And then to partner him, a player that a lot of managers are turning their nose up on this season, and it is Erling Haaland. One of the top point scorers last season. He was definitely the top point scorer the season before in his introduction season to the Premier League. 15 million of your budget to be bringing him into your team. It's a lot of money. But if you're going to tell me that Erling Haaland is going to be a differential just for £1 million more than last season, I'm going to snap your hand off, because he will be my captain almost every week. Obviously not this week, because I just feel like the fixture is there with Isak, and Isak showed some tremendous form towards the back end of the last season. But game week 2, guess who Manchester City have at home? Ipswich Town. It's going to be a goal fest. I don't see anything other than that. And I will be having Erling Haaland strictly on the armband. You could even make a case for maybe triple captaining him in that game week, because I see there's a lot less double game weeks this season due to the fixture rescheduling and saving the players from playing a lot more games than they need to. So yeah, for me, he's a definite go-to option. I can understand why people are sort of turning their nose up, because he is 15 million. But for me, it's only £1 million more than last season. Salah at 12.5 under a new manager, and we saw last season it wasn't his best season either. I just think, yeah, it's a no-brainer for me, and he is my only Manchester City asset as it stands. And I think there is good value in that Manchester City team, but for me, Erling Haaland, I'd be really, really surprised if I don't own him come game week 1. Okay, then, so to afford a team like this, you're going to have some very cheap individuals on the bench. As I mentioned, it's a £4 million goalkeeper who I don't expect to start. In this case, it's the legend of Danny Ward, if you remember from a couple seasons ago. On the bench as well, we've got his teammate Wout Faes. I think he will start for Leicester this season, so he could be a decent option. Obviously, Leicester's fixtures to start the season aren't great. There are a plethora of £4 million defenders, though. You've got the likes of Taylor Harwood-Bellis from Southampton. A few options actually at Southampton at £4 million. I think there's some at Ipswich as well. So the newly promoted side, you can easily get your hands on a £4 million playing defender. Elsewhere, the forwards, there is no likely starting 4.5 million forwards at the moment. I've gone for Jebison here as the sort of the third choice Bournemouth striker. He's only just signed from Sheffield United. I don't expect much from him. Again, I'm happy to just sort of dead the goalkeeper and the forward slot in order to increase budget for all the players elsewhere. Obviously, playing the bench is not as important maybe as what it has been in previous seasons when we were playing in like COVID times and fixtures were getting cancelled and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, that's a fine bench. And then finally, to wrap things up, got another £4.5 million defender sort of as that sort of bench option and to rotate out with Ezri Konsa and Dan Burn. And it is Anthony Robertson from Fulham. Showed some decent attacking threat last season. He's pretty nailed down in that Fulham team. Quite an exciting asset. I think Fulham will be an interesting watch this season. Obviously, losing João Paulinho. When they did lose him last season, they did manage to survive. But will they be able to do that for a whole season? We'll have to wait and see. And obviously, they're going to recruit players in between now and then. So we'll have to wait and see what their squad looks like as well. So yeah, that wraps up my full first draft in FPL 24-25. Okay then, so let me know what you thought about my team in the comments. Do you think that having Erling Haaland is just a mistake this season? Do you think he's way too much? Or do you think that, you know, you need to have him just for that captainable player in your team every single week? Let me know in the comments. As always, make sure you drop your questions as well. Anything that you think that you need some answers from the graduates, we'll be replying to every single one of them. As always, if you haven't already as well, make sure you do check out our Patreon. There's going to be loads of monthly prizes over there, as well as getting your team reviewed by me and Ben, loads of team news, just loads of a handy tool basically to help you throughout your FPL season. It's only £5 a month as well, and it's the only way to get your team reviewed by the graduates. So make sure you do check that out. It'll be the top link in the description. So that wraps up the video. Thank you very, very much for watching. If you haven't already, drop that like and make sure you subscribe if you're new around here to stay up to date with all the new Fantasy Premier League content. We really, really appreciate it. But until the next video, have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.